Hello, my name is Abby Bishop and I'm presenting on concept-based curriculum. This is a framework grounded in research by Erickson and Tomlinson, who I'll reference at the end of this presentation. It's a three-dimensional approach which combines what students will know, do, and understand. And this is characterized by synergy and higher level thinking. So essentially, concept-based curriculum is utilizing a specific concept to address multi-subject areas and to provide students experiences in which they can apply their learning rather than just learning rotely. Now, concept-based curriculum is organized in a specific framework. So when I was designing my lessons to fit into this concept, which I'll tell you about in the upcoming slides, I was looking at what's the purpose of the unit. So within that, I would think about the conceptual focus. I would also think about the long-term understandings for my students, the content that I wanted them to learn, and within that, the standards too that my students are working towards mastery in. I was also thinking about related concepts that went along with the overarching concept of the unit, and an essential question, as well as the skills that I wanted students to gain as they uncovered more knowledge and understanding of this concept. I wanted to think also about how I would measure my students' learning. So I came up with specific performance assessments that I would measure through observation, checklists, and hands-on experiences that my students would have in order to determine their understanding and their application level of their new learning. And I also thought about how students were going to learn these things. What specific types of activities would I have for them, and what specific resources would I use to implement this concept and implement the instruction of these standards. So I want to start by telling you about the purpose of the unit which I designed. So my concept that I wanted to focus on was essentially body parts and their functions. This is one of our preschool standards that we work on. And it just so lined up with our September theme, as we called it, of all about me and family. My essential question, of course, is going to be, how do you use your body and its functions throughout the day? One powerful thing that I feel that this concept-based curriculum specific unit will give them is the language that they need to communicate ailments or specific needs relating to their body, especially if they are hurt or sick. Now, this concept will also help my students to be able to choose activities and foods that support a healthy lifestyle. So as we learn about the functions of the different body parts, students can consider how they can really maximize those functions through a healthy lifestyle, being healthy, nutritious foods, and exercise. And one final thing that I considered was that students can analyze the body language and facial expressions of both their peers and people that they interact with to appropriately respond in conversations or interactions. So just analyzing how facial features can kind of give you cues to how somebody might be feeling, and to be able to respond to that through empathy if it's appropriate, or to be able to kind of leave you be if you're feeling upset about something, or to engage in an interaction with you if you are showing that you're happy, like my sweet friend here is doing. So I want to tell you more about my lesson unit that I designed with the key and related concepts. So all of these are broken down by the specific knowledge or skill that I believe students are going to gain from this unit and the different activities that I have planned, and then also the associated standards. So I'm just going to run through these knowledge and skills section, and then the standards, just know that it corresponds right along, but it's written right there for you to see if you'd like to look into that. And again, these come from the Georgia Early Learning and Development Standards, which I use to guide all of my instruction in the classroom, in addition to students' individual needs as outlined on their IEPs. So the knowledge and skill under science, content, and standards, I want students to be able to identify body parts and their functions, explore the basic needs and lifestyles of living things, and then also sorting living and non-living things. So these are all things that I believe are kind of the guiding skills and knowledge basis for this unit, though there are many great skills that I will outline through the rest of this. In communication, literacy, and language area, I want students to be able to communicate their feelings, apply new vocabulary relating to feelings, body parts, functions of body parts, and actions that they perform with their bodies. And I want them to also be able to write and draw about themselves. Now, looking at math, I want students to be able to demonstrate one-to-one correspondence when they are counting. So looking at body parts, how many fingers do you have? How many feet do you have? How many knees do you have? Things like that. I want students to compare their height. So we measured students' height and they compared who was the tallest, who was the shortest, if any students had similar or the same height. I also want students to describe where their body parts are positioned, so using positional words like my mouth is under my nose, my eyes are next to my nose, my ears are on the side of my head. So this is an important standard that we work on with students, and we can use this too in giving directions. So it helps students to be able to generalize their understanding of positional words. And finally, in math, I want students to analyze data from graphs that we create together based on their physical characteristics. So how many students have brown eyes? How many students have black hair? The next area is social studies. I want students here to compare and contrast their characteristics with that of others in the class. I want them to utilize technology as we explore different sites that give us access to learn more about body parts. I want students to also describe the roles of a few community helpers, including doctors and veterinarians. In the area of play, approaches to play and learning, I want students to engage in imaginative play as they act like doctors or veterinarians, or act like patients of doctors or clients of veterinarians, and analyzing the situations that might occur in the real world related to their new knowledge of body parts and their functions, both in themselves, other human beings, and also in other living things. I want students to show their creativity as they engage in problem solving. I want students to consider various possibilities, especially in those imaginative play sequences, as peers or teachers suggest options and other possibilities to engage in different types of imaginative scenarios. In the area of social emotional learning, I want students to identify both their personal characteristics and that of others. I want them to describe and explain their emotions and to show different emotions using facial expressions. And I also want students to practice and to apply empathy towards others especially after reading body language or understanding more about emotions. In the area of physical development and motor skills, I want students to relate their body functions to nutrition, so thinking about how to fuel their body through nutritious foods. I want students to demonstrate body and spatial awareness, especially as they engage in play outside and through centers, and considering how their bodies help them to be able to do those things. I want students to finally apply their senses to learning experiences. In the area of cognitive process, I want students to draw conclusions. So as students engage in experiments or observational opportunities, I want them to be able to draw conclusions about the functions of body parts or the types of body parts that perform specific functions. I also want students to transfer their knowledge through imitation. So this is specifically targeted in the imaginative play. And finally, I want students to recognize cause and effect relationships. If I fuel myself with this, this might happen. Thinking about creative development, these are things like art through music, dance, and visual representation. I want students to demonstrate their understanding through both dance and song, which we use a lot in preschool for learning. And I would also like to look over how I'm going to measure my students' learning. So I'm going to use performance assessments to analyze students' understanding and their application of their new learning about body parts and their functions. And finally, how will my students learn these things? So I broke the learning activities down into 3 areas: whole group, centers, and music, of course. So during whole group activities, students are going to be engaging in Matman practice.
Now, what else does Matman have on his face like we have?
Nose.
Nose. Good job, Mihai. Matman has one nose, one nose, one nose. Matman has one nose so that he can
See.
No, you don't see with your nose. You bottom 2 chair. You, what's that? What's that called?
No.
You, if I got a flower and I, what is that called when you get a flower and you go, what's that called? You smell. Can you smell? Smell. Smell. Does it smell good or bad? Do you like the smell?
Yeah.
Yes, you like the smell. Some people don't like the smell of some flowers, and that's okay. To each his own. That's our Matman's nose. Next up, Matman has one mouth. That's right, Destiny. Matman has one mouth, one mouth, one mouth. Matman has one mouth so that he can eat. And what else do we do with our mouth? We smile. Bottom 2 chair, thank you for putting on Matman's mouth. He's smiling. That shows that he is feeling happy. That's right. And let's see, what else does he have on his face? We did his eyes, his nose, his mouth. What else do we have? You do have a tummy, but not on your face. What else do you have on your face? You have your ears. And what do your ears do? They hear. They hear. They can hear music. Put the ears on. Oh, thank you for putting his ears on. Okay, now Matman's going to stay put. Matman has 2 ears, 2 ears, 2 ears. Matman has 2 ears so that he can hear. Ear. And Nihad, you were just saying Matman has his belly and his body. His body. Nihad, can you put his body on? bottom to seat. Bottom to chair. He has a body, and this body is in the shape of a rectangle. And it represents our paper. I like how Mihad, you put the paper, the smile at the top left corner of the paper. Look, inside his body he has his heart. When you go to the doctor, they might use a stethoscope to listen to your heart. Let me listen to your heart. Thump, 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 thump. I hear your heart beating. I hear your heart beating. I hear your heart beating. And Daniel. I hear your heart beating. You can use the stethoscope when you're at the Dramatic Play Center. You can pretend to be the doctor listening to the baby's heartbeat.
Students will also be using their heights and analysis of those heights, as I talked about in the math area. And similarly, students are going to be analyzing graphs of their physical features. Students will also be engaging in healthy cooking activities. So students utilized a tortilla and some healthy fruits and veggies to create a representation of their face. So they would use like a strawberry slice for their nose, bananas for their eyes, and blueberries to make a smile. And then we even spiralized some vegetables to use for their hair representation. Students are also going to be exploring their 5 senses through science explorations. We looked at a coconut, tasted some coconut, smelled the coconut, felt the coconut, to explore our different senses. Oh, and we listened, of course, to the water inside the coconut swishing around. We also went on a nature walk, and afterwards we sorted living and non-living things. And then finally, students learned and then practiced self-portraits. So you'll see that again in the centers. So, like I said, at the bottom of this page, you can see that students practice self-portraits in the Writing Center. Students pretend to be a doctor or a patient or a vet visiting an office or working at an office and look at, use their knowledge of body parts and their functions to kind of analyze patients and just engage in fun, dramatic play.
And you are going to listen to his heart. Where's the baby's heart? In its chest, yeah. Oh, okay. Dr. Destiny's here to check out the baby's eyes. Look at the baby's eyes. Can you look at his eyes with that?
A baby, you, a baby. A baby, you, a baby.
Oh, is that her prescription? Oh, did you write your X on there?
A baby.
That's awesome. Good job. Oh, her knee? Her knee's hurting her?
Oh, thanks for moving that out of the baby's way of his head. Oh, gotta cover his eyes again. During Puzzle Center, students will have an opportunity to work with the potato heads and to use the different facial features for the most part on those potato heads to kind of engage in learning related to facial features.
Okay.
We'll also have an opportunity to play in the sensory center. This is kind of like a calming center where students engage their senses, but we'll have extra mirrors up for them to look at their facial features, look at their physical features, and kind of analyze those. In the science center, students will have 5 senses exploration available to look at different materials that they can find in their school and home environments, and just to explore those with their 5 senses. And in the block center, like I talked about in the math section, students will be measuring their height and measuring the length of both their self and their body parts. So how many blocks long is your foot? How many cubes long is your hand? Things like that. And then finally in music, these are just some of the songs we'll sing to apply our new learning and to engage in learning about the concept, body parts, and functions. So like I talked about earlier, Matman, of course, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, 1 little finger, hokey pokey, 2 hands, if you're happy and you know it, and it's time to wiggle. Share with you the references that I used, of course, in my research on this concept-based curriculum, this specific curricular strategy, and this framework. And then, of course, the standards that we utilize.
The feet and the tummy, the breast.
I love it.
And then we search upper hand, the shoe, and the head, the shoe, and the bird shoe, and the shoe,